David, the legendary shepherd turned king, was a songwriter at heart. Out of the 150 Psalms in the Bible, David wrote at least 75. Each one like a playlist track born from his real-life highs and lows. Whether he was celebrating a victory, battling despair, or seeking forgiveness, David poured his heart into these songs and prayers. Even though these songs were written over 3,000 years ago, the stories they tell are still relevant to your life today.
All right. What is up, Redemption students? Am I on? Give me? Yep. All right. How we doing? Is it okay? Woo. All right. Well, I love seeing some of the jerseys. It is officially fall, which means football season and pumpkin and apple spice and all the things, right? And I want to thank Jeremiah for leading worship tonight. Good to have him back. Gonna give it up for him. Yeah, appreciate it. Giving our band a night off. If you don't know, Jeremiah and his family, they own a shop down on the square called The Next Chapter. If you've been there before, if you had their boba tea. Yep, excited. But they have really good fall drinks, so if you're looking for one, go hit them up, but we're really thankful he's here. But tonight I want to invite my friend Landry. Give it up for Landry. She's going to come read our psalm for us. Should be. Is it on? They'll turn it on. Got it, Maya? Hello? Is it on? Wait for it. She'll get you. It's Jeremiah's. That helps. Try again.
Is it on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Hey guys, I'm Landry and I'm a junior at Jasper High School. Thanks guys. I'm going to be reading Psalms 59, 1 through 5 and 14 through 17. Rescue me from my enemies, O God. Protect me from those who have come to destroy me. Rescue me from these criminals. Save me from these murderers. They have set an ambush for me. Fierce enemies are out there waiting, Lord, though I have not sinned or offended them. I have done nothing wrong, yet they prepare to attack me. Wake up, see what is happening, and help me. O Lord God of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, wake up and punish those hostile nations. Show no mercy to wicked traitors. My enemies come out at night, snarling like vicious dogs as they prowl the streets. They scavenge for food, but go to sleep unsatisfied. But as for me, I will sing about your power. Each morning I will sing with joy about your unfailing love. For you have been my refuge, a place of safety when I am in distress. O my strength, to you I sing praises. For you, O God, are my refuge, the God who shows me unfailing love.
Good work. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. All right, so throughout this series, we are looking at psalms like that one that are written by David, who would later go on to be King David. And these psalms are walking us through what he is experiencing, what he is feeling as he goes through a certain situation. So this psalm is titled like this: A Psalm of David, regarding the time Saul sent soldiers to watch David's house in order to kill him. So in order to fully understand the context that this psalm was written, we got to go to that story. So that story is in 1 Samuel chapter 19. If you got a Bible, open it to 1 Samuel 19, verse 11. And as you turn there, at this point in our story, we have already seen the current king of Israel, Saul, attempt to kill David purely out of jealousy because David is succeeding at life. That's it. David has done nothing wrong. He hasn't necessarily threatened to take over as king, but Saul is furious. He's already attempted his life once. All right, but at this point, David's not yet king. He has been anointed to be king, but he is waiting until that moment. That's where we pick up in verse 11. So read these with me. They're on the screen as well. Then Saul sent troops to watch David's house. They were told to kill David when he came out the next morning. Sorry, y'all. Let's catch it a little bit. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't escape tonight, you will be dead by morning." So she helped him climb out through a window, and he fled and escaped. We're going to stop there. You're going to read more of that in your group as well. But this is another attempt on David's life. But his wife, Michal, right, is very brave here. For a little bit of context, Michal is the daughter of Saul. So we are a very connected family right here, okay? So she is the daughter of Saul. Saul gave Michal to David in marriage after David defeated Goliath, the giant, which saved Saul's life and all the Israelites, right? So all this is very connected together. And you'll read the rest of the story in your groups. But Michal's very brave here, right? She defies her dad. She defies the king to help David escape. And David runs and he goes to Samuel, who is a prophet who anointed him to be king. He's kind of like his mentor. And he runs to his house, and this is what we see in verse 19. So jump down just a little bit. When the report reached Saul that David was at Naioth in Ramah, he sent troops to capture him. But when they arrived and saw Samuel leading a group of prophets who were prophesying, the Spirit of God came upon Saul's men, and they also began to prophesy. And when Saul heard what had happened, he sent other troops, but they too prophesied. And the same thing happened a third time. So here's our escape mission number 2 of the night, all right? So he's with Samuel. He thinks he's in a good spot, but Saul hears about it. He sends a group of troops to go and kill David. They come in, guns ablazing, but they don't capture him. And why? Not because David hides, not because David runs or fights or isn't there. But why? Because the Spirit of God overtakes them and they begin prophesying. So I want you to picture this because this would have been crazy, all right? This was not normal. Troops come in, guns ablazing. They get into town and all of a sudden they just drop their spears, they drop their swords, and they just start preaching about God and the Bible. And this doesn't happen once, it happens 3 times, and then you'll read later in your story that then Saul's like, y'all can't do it, I'll do it. So he comes to town, and then he starts prophesying and can't capture David. So this second rescue mission from God is just supernatural, right? Very different moment. But then we keep going, because after this escape, David is going to run, and he's going to run and find his best friend, Jonathan. And Jonathan, to complicate things a little bit, Jonathan is Saul's son. And he is also the heir to the throne. And so David runs to him, and this story is in chapter 20, but it's a little bit long, so I'm going to summarize a little bit of it, and then we're going to read together. But this one's a little long. David goes to Jonathan and is basically like, bro, your dad is trying to kill me. And Jonathan's like, dude, that can't be true. Like, I mean, my dad would at least tell me if he planned to kill you. Like, I'm sure that's not what's going on. And David's like, here's how we're going to know. If you go to the dinner that we're both supposed to be at tonight, and I don't go, I'm going to stay here. If your dad is ticked, then you'll know he wants to kill me. And Jonathan's like, great. And if that happens, you stay in this field, I will come and tell you so that you can escape. So this is where we're going to pick up in verse 19. Chapter 20, verse 19. Sorry about that. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid before. This is Jonathan speaking to David. And wait there by the stone pile. I will come out and shoot 3 arrows to the side of the stone pile as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy to bring the arrows back. If you hear me tell him, they're on this side, then you will know as surely as the Lord lives that all is well and there is no trouble. But if I tell him, go farther, the arrows are still ahead of you, then it will mean that you must leave immediately, for the Lord is sending you away. I love this. It's a great game plan, great way, right? They couldn't text each other and let them know, like, get out of town, this isn't good. This was their way to communicate without anyone knowing. And I'm sure you can guess what happened, right? Jonathan goes to the dinner, and Saul is furious that David is not there. So mad, in fact, that he throws a spear at Jonathan, attempting to kill his own son. And right in that moment, Jonathan's like, this is not good. My dad is going to kill David. So he runs out to the field, and he does exactly what they agreed to do. And in verse 41 of chapter 20, we're going to see the final interaction between Jonathan and David. And these guys are best friends, but this is the last time they're going to see each other. Jonathan is going to die before David is able to see him again. So this is a hard moment in verse 41. As soon as the boy was gone, David came out from where he had been hiding near the stone pile. David bowed 3 times to Jonathan with his face to the ground. Both of them were in tears as they embraced each other and said goodbye, especially David. So why do we kind of went through those 3 stories really, really fast. But these stories begin the journey of probably around a decade that David is running from Saul. that David is away from Israel, away from the throne, away from his home, running. Timelines aren't super clear in David's life right here. We know that David was too young to fight in the battle against Goliath. He was not there. He came just to feed his brothers, and that's how he fought Goliath. And we know he didn't become king till 30. So they guess around a decade before that happens. And so this would be like spending your 20s not backpacking through Europe, but rather backpacking from cave to cave, from city that hates you to city that hates you, all the while being chased by a murderer, right? This is not a good experience, but it's at the beginning of this journey that David wrote our psalm that we read today, Psalm 59. This is going to be on the screens. We're going to read a few of these verses again. Psalm 59, verse 1 says, "Rescue me from my enemies, O God. Protect me from those who have come to destroy me. Rescue me from these criminals. Save me from these murderers." Rescue me, protect me, save me. He is writing this inside his home with troops standing around ready to kill him. He's praying, God, please come through. And over and over and over, 3 times we see God answers this prayer. He saves him, he rescues him, he protects him. But here's what I think is interesting. If I had to guess, this is probably not the way David hoped he would be rescued. I would imagine David's probably thinking, God, a better way might have been for you to have just changed Saul's mind. I could have just grown up in the palace, learned from his mistakes, would have been great. Or maybe, my best friend and my wife could have talked to their dad on my behalf and we could have all been friends. Or maybe, worst case, I could have just lived with Samuel, my mentor, and stayed there safe away from Saul. That's not what happened. That's not the rescue mission that God gave David. But God still rescued him. And here's what's really important from David's story. David's time on the run, those 10 years, and we're going to read some stories from his time on the run, prepared him to be king in a way that Saul was never prepared to be king. So Saul, when he became king, he was anointed and then immediately became king. There wasn't this big gap like David has, and Saul was really insecure. You see in the very beginning, he's like, I don't know, did you get the right guy? Are you sure it's me? And from that point on, he led from those insecurities. He led with the desire for the people that he was leading just to like him, to appreciate him, to follow him, always trying to earn the right to be king. And then David came in and he just started poking at all those insecurities and all those fears, not on purpose, simply by being himself. But then you have David. David was anointed to be king and then waited over a decade to be king. He sat and he was a shepherd for a while, and then he sat in the palace under Saul. Then he ran and sat in caves alone and then had men that followed him, and he had to lead them through really difficult situations on the run. See, David never tried to earn his right to be king. David was never trying to prove himself to everyone. He never tried to force his way in. He just followed God, he trusted God, and he cared more about what God thought of him than what the people thought of him. And that shows up as he reigns, as he is king, and that's why he becomes one of the greatest kings and why Saul's ending is pretty tragic. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But God came through. He rescued David. And so right now, if you're in here and you are sitting in an unanswered prayer right now, you have something going on in your life, you're like, I've asked God to fix that, and he hasn't come through. Or maybe I haven't even asked him because I just don't even think he can come through on this. Here's my big encouragement tonight to all of us. This is to myself as much as you guys. Keep calling out that prayer. Other words, keep praying, right? Keep calling out that prayer. Keep going. Don't give up. Keep praying. Pray that God would rescue you or lead you or give you the wisdom or patience or strength or peace, or whatever it is you need. Keep calling out those prayers like we see David do. Keep going. We're going to keep reading in our psalm. Verse 3 has this really great parallel between David and Jesus. David says, "Fierce enemies are out there waiting, Lord, though I have not sinned or offended them." And we said at the beginning of the semester, you're going to see all the time, David and Jesus are great parallels to one another. They're both being hunted down, even though they did nothing wrong, simply because people are jealous of their attention and popularity and what they're saying. Here's the big difference, though. David is rescued again and again. David hides. David runs. But Jesus just gives his life up. He hands himself over to his enemies. Jesus is completely innocent, and yet he stands in our place. He stands in place of people who are guilty. And because of his faithfulness to do that, to not run, to not hide, to not fight or talk his way out of it, because of that faithfulness to die on the cross and to raise from the dead 3 days later, we know, even if you don't always believe it, we know that we can call out prayers to God because he is strong enough, he is able enough, he is big enough, he is faithful enough to answer your prayers. As we close up, I'm going to read the end of the psalm again, and Jeremiah, you can come on up here in the next minute, or whenever you're ready. I love this scripture. I read it when I was practicing today, and I thought, I need to put this up on like my mirror or in my car. Such a reminder of who God is. In verse 16 and 17 of Psalm 59. But as for me, I will sing about your power. Each morning I will sing with joy about your unfailing love, for you have been my refuge, a place of safety when I'm in distress. O my strength, to you I sing praises. For you, O God, are my refuge, the God who shows me unfailing love. Just remember for a second when David's writing this. He didn't write this on the back end of his journey. He didn't write this when he was back in the palace, thinking back about all God has done. He was writing this inside his home, probably throwing clothes into a bag, everything he needed, writing his last journal entry, not knowing if he would even see the next day. He was calling out this praise. He wrote it down as he's running for his life. And yet, look what he sings about. He sings about God's power, about God's unfailing love, about God as a refuge and a safety. He finishes the psalm not lamenting about his pain and his struggle, but about how great God is. And this is the other thing we're called to do. As we call out God's praise, the other thing that David reminds us to do is to keep calling out that praise. And we're going to do that in a minute. Keep calling out that praise. Whatever is going on in your life right now. And listen, I get it. I know it is real stuff. You have real things to complain about. You have real things to cry about. You have real things to pray and be angry about. I know that. I am not downplaying what anyone in this room is going through because I don't know what each and every one of you is experiencing. So I'm not saying those aren't real. But here's what I'm challenging you to do. In the midst of crying and complaining and praying and all of that, keep calling out praise. So if your friends are jerks or talking bad about you, that sucks. God is still present and loyal. If your parents are unkind or hurtful, God is still a good father. If this weather that's coming up, the upcoming winter scares you because you're going to have seasonal depression, you already know it's coming, God is still joyful even when you don't feel it. If you have an unanswered prayer, God is still listening. If you don't know what's next in your life, God is still in control. If you have doubts about God or feel angry towards him or you don't even believe that he is real, God is still talking to you. God is still here for you. And so as we worship together in this last song, that's what I want to challenge us to do. The coaches are going to be around the room. And this is true every week, even when we don't say it. They're always here for you. That's the only reason they're here is for you. And so if you need to pray, if you need to talk, if you need to ask a question, do that during this time. But they're really simple little stations. You see these little buckets, and there are note cards and there are pens, and there's one in the back of the room by the camera too. And I've just felt recently just this push to write down our prayers and to pray for one another. And so if you have something that you're like, I could really use prayer, it could be as simple as a test tomorrow that you're nervous about. That's real. let's pray for it. It can be as difficult as you're grieving a loss of someone you love. Whatever it is, if you want someone to pray with you, for you, just write down that prayer on the note card, throw it in the bucket. You can write your name. If you want us to pray for you by name, we will. If you want no one to ever know it's you, that's okay too. And I'll go first. I'll go down there and I'm going to write my prayer because y'all, I have prayers that I'm like, where are you, God? Answer my prayer. Come through. And so I need other people praying for me. And so whether you have no one praying for you or you have a whole army praying for you, we as a staff and we as coaches want to pray with you. And so as we go through this song, talk to your coach, pray with your coach. Come up here, write down a prayer to God. Take this time to call out your prayers and to call out your praise because he wants to hear them both. So you can do this during this last worship song.